Hello and welcome to the Lightbearer's Library. In today's journal entry, I wanted to talk about intuition and why I think it would make our world a better place if we understood it more and left room open for it in ourselves and in society around us. So, as you may know from my channel, I'm really interested in personality type because I think when we understand that we have a unique personality or unique, I like to think of them as puzzle pieces. When we're aware that we have a unique puzzle piece, a unique way of seeing the world and exploring the world, then we can recognize that the people around us have different ways of looking at the world, and they're potentially a different puzzle piece from us, and we can learn to respect one another, another's ideas, another's feelings, another's thoughts, and we can make the world a better place. And that's kind of what the Lightbearer's Library is all about, trying to find these ways of making the world kinder and lighter and more harmonious. So, in type theory, there are what are called cognitive functions. So it's just a fancy word of saying there are kind of this comes from Carl Jung, and he talked about 8 different ways of using our cognition. So we all have access to all 8, but they kind of work differently within us, and that's getting complicated. But there are 4 judging processes, which means the way that we make decisions about things. So we can either make decisions by feeling, or we can make decisions by thinking. So some people use more of their feeling to make a decision. I feel like this is the right thing to do. And some people use thinking more, and they say, I think, this is the way to do it and make a decision for me or the world or whatever. So what I wanted to talk about is a perceiving function, though. So we have 4 perceiving functions, and those are sensing is 2 of those, and sensing is how we sense the world. I won't get too much into those. And then the other way is intuition. So then with each of those thinking, feeling, intuiting, and sensing, there are extroverted ways of doing it and introverted ways of doing it. So when you put those all together, you get 16 different personality types, which is kind of what I like to think about as types. So what I wanted to talk specifically about today is the extroverted intuition cognitive function. Now, so it's a perceiving function, and what it does is it gathers information from the external world around us, and it is a function that is all about exploring, right? Exploring ideas and thoughts, and it connects dots between things. It recognizes patterns. I like to think about it as it's like puzzles. I love puzzles. I use extroverted intuition as one of my main cognitive functions, and so I love puzzles, and so it's all about ideas, and I think that it's one of those things that is all about what if, or what could be. We come up with all these brainstorming and thinking outside the box and inspiration and innovation, and it's kind of like, that's why one of my mottos is to be inspired by others and to inspire others. That's kind of my I feel like my purpose in life is to do that. So inspiration is a word of extroverted intuition, and it's kind of like it can be a very optimistic function, and it sees different angles and different viewpoints, and it doesn't it just is excited about how we can look at the world in different ways. So I've been thinking about skills lately, and when we don't use a skill, we can lose that skill and or get rusty at it or not be as good at it. And that I think it's important to, in this world of AI and new technology, I've been thinking a lot about skills. And if we don't continue to pass on our skills to others, then those skills are lost. And we can see that in the past, skills that our ancestors had and they weren't passed down or we didn't practice them. And so we no longer know how to do them. And so I want to, be raising awareness for the cognitive function of extroverted intuition, because what I think it's helpful to do is it helps us to see different viewpoints. It helps us to stand in someone else's shoes and go, okay, well, how are they seeing the world? How could they be seeing it? Why are they, if I disagree with them, what is it that could make them think differently from me? Or why are they seeing it from that perspective, that way? And I think, so when people believe different things from me, when people think differently from me, when they behave in ways that I'm just like, I don't understand why they're behaving in that way, I can use that extroverted intuition to contemplate many different reasons why they might believe that way or have that value or act in that way. And I think that, it helps us to not jump to conclusions about people and about events that happen in the world. Can look at an event and think about all the reasons why that might have happened. And it can help us to be more empathetic with others as well. So I think that where I see a lot of this in the world is, on social media. I don't do social media. I have been off social media platforms for 10 years, and I'm so grateful for that because I think it allows me to be a lot more positive about the world. But I know that there's this, cancel culture, and it's like if you don't believe this or think this or feel this way about this situation, you're wrong and you deserve to be canceled. I just think, I think I think that's how we've been shaped as a culture. I think that a lot of that comes from potentially Christianity, where it's like, this is orthodoxy and this is how we believe. And if you don't believe this, then you're excommunicated. Does that sound familiar? It's like, if you don't believe these things, you're canceled from, speaking your mind or having, any opinion. And so I think that extroverted intuition allows a bit more space for contemplating, being open to other ways of thinking and feeling and behaving. We still might not come to agree with that person, even though, we can see all the reasons why they might, believe something. But it at least says, no, I can see valid reasons why they might. And, there are many different perspectives. And I think that's, again, why personality type helps me to go, there are at least, there's obviously everybody's an individual, but if you think about 16 different personalities, there's 16 different ways of perceiving and judging the world through all the different arrangements of the cognitive functions. So I think that by having this sort of cancel culture, we're really squashing that cognitive function in people, and this makes sense because when they've done studies about the percentages of different personality types in the population, those personality types are people that use intuition in general in their top two functions are 30% of the population. So, and then that's split between those who use extroverted intuition and introverted intuition. So, they're similar intuitions, but slightly different. So you can see that most 70% of the population is really using that sensing perception of the world, and it's much more concrete. And it's like, no, this is the way that the world is. I can see that that's how it is. And intuition goes, yeah, but it could be this other way. So I think that it's one of those things that we need to give space for in our own lives, and in, like, if we know people that try and play devil's advocate, that can be sometimes, like, if you've got a devil's advocate friend, then perhaps that's what is happening there. And yeah, I also think it can be connected. We think about AI and how a lot of it is being used, I think, these days to brainstorm or get ideas or get a general outline of something. And I think that that's actually giving over our extroverted intuition to a machine. And so we're actually handing over one of our cognitive functions to the machine. And I think that's dangerous. And I think that we should think about this for ourselves. People can do what they want to do. Again, using extroverted intuition, for me, it's like, and also my other function of introverted feeling. People can do what they want, right? They can have whatever values they want. And, but I think that because intuition is not as valued in our culture, I don't think we're even thinking about how a lot of AI is actually being used to take over the skill of brainstorming, of coming up with ideas, coming up with connections, coming up with the initial thought. And so it could be that this is the beginning of it taking over other cognitive functions, is kind of what my mind is thinking about. Does it then start to take over, human thinking or human feeling or human, and if we don't use a skill, then we lose it. So I'm contemplating this, and I think that, I think a lot of it is a bit silly, if I'm being honest. It's like, if we don't practice a skill, say like writing, I know I see ads for Grammarly, and it's like, if someone doesn't practice the skill of writing or continue keeping the practice of the skill of writing, then it's like, then you lose that skill of writing. And I know a lot of people say, well, I just use it to correct my work or whatever. And it's like, each person has to answer that question for themselves. But these are just some of the things that I think about. So I think that's it. I'd love to hear from you any thoughts you have about the idea of this extroverted cognitive function, and maybe some ways that you see it in yourself. Do you see that, and do you give space for other people to, or do you often contemplate how others can believe or think or give room for openness in your thinking? And yeah, I think it's worth contemplating. If we want to have a more kind, loving world, we have to be willing to listen to one another and kind of see where each other is coming from, and not cancel one another for thinking differently or believing differently, as we can see from the past. That only leads to violence. This is what I've seen. I'm a history major, and that's what I summed up from my history degree. Yeah, it's not good. So leave me a comment about what your thoughts are on this topic. It's not It's not necessarily like a honed in topic, but it's just some thoughts that I've been having. Anyway, love to hear from you. And if you've gotten this far, please subscribe and leave a comment. Okay, signing off for now. XOXO, Kate.